Why? I talked about you like 6 months ago before you fell off. You're falling off now. The only way you were getting a click is if you had me in a part of the song. Bitch. Fuck. Shit's ass. You suck. Go yell at 9-to-5 workers. Go yell at 9-to-5 workers. That's what you're good for. Go scream and yell at 9-to-5 workers. Go do it. And did she say some
There's a pattern that keeps repeating every few months online. Adin Ross says something ignorant, something offensive, something clearly designed to spark outrage. And every time, the internet responds the same way. Shock, disappointment, confusion. People ask, what happened to him? When did he become like this? But that question is built on a false premise. Because Adin Ross didn't suddenly change, he's just no longer hiding. What we're seeing now isn't a fall off, it's a reveal. The myth of the fall off. To fall off, you have to first stand on something solid: talent, skill, vision, craft. Adin Ross never had that foundation. From the very beginning, his rise wasn't driven by originality or creativity, it was driven by proximity. He existed near rappers, near athletes, near bigger streamers, near controversy. He didn't create moments, he reacted to them. He didn't shape conversations, he benefited from being in the room while someone else did. This is an important distinction because internet fame has blurred the line between presence and ability. Adin Ross mastered presence, but presence without substance doesn't age well. Proximity is not talent. If you remove the guest appearances, the shock moments, the viral clips, what's left? He isn't a comedian. He isn't a commentator with insight. He isn't a musician, journalist, or storyteller. He is a reactor. And reaction content isn't inherently bad, but it requires something else to work long term: perspective, wit, intelligence, or growth. Adin Ross never developed those things. He relied on access instead. That's why, as the novelty wore off, the content became more extreme, louder, meaner, more desperate. Because when you don't have a craft, escalation becomes the only move. Culture without respect. One of the most uncomfortable but necessary conversations around Adin Ross is his relationship with black culture. For years, his brand leaned heavily on hip-hop aesthetics, black slang, black music, and black artists. His audience overlap, his collaborators, his cultural references, all pulled from a culture he benefited from immensely. But benefiting from a culture isn't the same as respecting it, and moments where he uses racially degrading language toward a black woman artist, especially one with actual talent and artistic credibility, expose the truth that was always there. This isn't just about one comment, it's about a pattern. There's a type of influencer who loves black culture as entertainment, but feels entitled to demean black people when they don't play along. They want the energy, the style, the cool, but not the humanity. That's not edgy behavior, that's exploitation. Why rage farming becomes the default. When someone lacks a real skill set, their career has a ceiling. Once the novelty fades, they face a choice: evolve or inflame. Adin Ross chose inflame. Rage farming is not accidental, it's a strategy, a last resort engagement model for creators who can't deepen their work or expand their audience organically. Outrage guarantees clicks, outrage guarantees reactions, outrage guarantees relevance temporarily, but it also hollows you out. Because rage content doesn't build legacy, it burns bridges and accelerates decay. Opinion without qualification. One of the most absurd elements of Adin Ross's current persona is how confidently he critiques other people's skills, artists, musicians, performers. Criticism isn't off limits, but credibility matters. You don't have to be a musician to critique music, but you do need taste, understanding, or articulation. Adin Ross brings none of that. His critiques aren't analysis, they're dismissals. He doesn't explain why something doesn't work. He doesn't engage with the art. He just insults. That's not commentary, that's noise. At that point, you're not contributing, you're posturing. Fame without friction. One reason Adin Ross feels so emboldened is that his rise lacked friction. No gatekeepers, no editors, no mentors, no pushback. Platforms rewarded growth without maturity, popularity without responsibility, attention without accountability. And when someone becomes famous before they develop discipline, self-awareness, or respect for others, fame doesn't amplify their best qualities, it exposes their worst ones. That's why the mask slips so violently. The bigger problem: anyone can be famous. This is where Adin Ross stops being the main character and becomes the symptom. He represents what happens when the internet treats fame as a personality trait, when platforms prioritize engagement over excellence, when outrage beats originality, when clout replaces competence. We didn't just platform Adin Ross, we rewarded him for being empty, and now people are surprised that emptiness sounds ugly when it speaks. Why this doesn't end well. Rage doesn't scale, shock doesn't mature, and controversy without substance always collapses inward. Adin Ross isn't controversial because he's brave or boundary pushing. He's controversial because he has nothing else to offer. No evolution, no refinement, no craft, just volume. And when the algorithm inevitably moves on, as it always does, the question won't be, why did he fall off? It'll be, what was ever there to begin with? Adin Ross didn't lose the plot. He never had one. He is what happens when proximity replaces talent, when culture is consumed but not respected, and when rage farming becomes a substitute for growth. And if there's a lesson here, it's not just about him. It's about what kind of voices we choose to amplify and why. So no, this isn't about canceling Adin Ross, even though he's like a wart on the ass of the internet. It's about what happens when the internet mistakes attention for ability and proximity for talent. When being loud replaces being good, and outrage becomes a personality. Adin Ross didn't break the system, he's the product of it. A system that rewards escalation over evolution. A system that platforms people long before they develop depth, discipline, or respect. And when someone like that finally runs out of novelty, all that's left is the ugliest version of themselves, broadcast in HD. The reason this conversation matters isn't because Adin Ross said something stupid. It's because there are hundreds more just like him, waiting to be algorithmically crowned next. So the real question isn't why is he like this, it's why do we keep rewarding it? Because if fame keeps going to people with nothing to say, eventually all we'll hear is noise. And at that point, the problem won't be the creators, it'll be us. One thing people keep pretending not to see is that streamers don't exist in isolation. They're not lone wolves, they're not accidental rebels, they're not clueless kids who just happened to stumble into influence. They are birds of a feather, and they flock together for a reason. The biggest streamers all operate inside the same ecosystem, the same platforms, the same managers, the same brand deals, the same political interests circling the space. They cross-pollinate audiences, protect each other from consequences, and play dumb when lines are crossed. And when something controversial happens, like Adin Ross streaming Donald Trump, people rush to act like it was naive, accidental, or apolitical. It wasn't. You don't accidentally platform one of the most powerful political figures on the planet. You don't accidentally turn your stream into a political spectacle. And you definitely don't do it without understanding the optics, the audience, and the downstream impact. They knew exactly what they were doing. Streamers aren't apolitical, they're useful. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Large streamers are incredibly valuable to larger systems of power. Not because they're smart, not because they're principled, but because they're useful. They reach millions of young, disengaged, politically underdeveloped viewers. Audiences who don't trust institutions, don't watch traditional media, and don't think of themselves as political, but are highly influenceable. That makes streamers perfect intermediaries. They can say, I'm not political, while doing political work. They can claim ignorance while shaping perception. They can frame propaganda as just content. And when backlash comes, they hide behind the same excuse every time. It's just entertainment. That excuse only works if you pretend influence isn't real. This is where the birds of a feather part really matters. Streamers protect each other because they're all tied to the same incentives. The moment one of them is held accountable, the rest get nervous because it exposes how manufactured the whole thing is. They aren't independent voices. They aren't cultural leaders. They are nodes in a larger attention machine. Algorithms reward outrage. Sponsors reward engagement. Political actors reward access, and streamers, especially ones without real talent or craft, slot neatly into that machine because they don't ask questions. They don't push back, they just perform. That doesn't make them masterminds, It makes them puppets who think they're pulling the strings. Why Adin Ross was the perfect choice. Adin Ross wasn't chosen because he's insightful. He was chosen because he's predictable. He won't challenge power. He won't ask hard questions. He won't disrupt the narrative. He'll laugh, nod, platform, and cash the engagement check. That's why this wasn't a mistake. It was a feature. And that's why pretending streamers are just kids with cameras is one of the biggest lies on the internet. They're grown men with massive platforms, operating inside systems that benefit from their silence, their ignorance, and their willingness to play along. So when Adin Ross says something ignorant or demeaning, it's not just a personal failure, it's a systemic one. Because this is what happens when influence is handed to people who never had to earn it, question it, or understand it. And once you see that, you stop asking why they act this way and start asking who benefits when they do. But anyway, I hope y'all liked the video. Stop making these mid-ass content creators pop. At least if you are, make my mid-ass go up by making sure y'all like, comment, and subscribe. Alright, I'm out. Peace.
Why? I talked about you like 6 months ago before you fell off. You're falling off now. The only way you were getting a click is if you had me in a part of the song. Bitch. Fuck. Shit's ass. You suck. Go yell at 9 to 5 workers. Go yell at 9 to 5 workers. That's what you're good for. Go scream and yell at 9 to 5 workers. Go do it. And did she say some